Welcome, dear friends, to a heartwarming tale of love, loss, and the unbreakable bonds of family that will leave you believing in the power of miracles. Enjoy the story. Golden autumn leaves swirled around 10-year-old Emily's feet as she bounded down the stairs, her honey-blonde curls bouncing with each light step. Heart fluttering with anticipation, she burst into the sunlit kitchen where her father sat at the worn oak table, reading the morning paper. "Dad, would you like to go with me to the nearby town today to have some fun?" Emily asked breathlessly, her sapphire eyes sparkling with excitement. "We could explore the old fortress, visit the churches, maybe even go on a hike." Robert lowered the newspaper, a slow grin spreading across his rugged, tanned face. He had been working non-stop on the farm for months, his small agricultural business struggling after years of neglect. But seeing the hopeful joy radiating from his daughter's face, Robert knew he had to make time for her. "Of course, sweetheart," he replied eagerly, folding the paper and rising to his feet. "I think a day trip is just what we both need." "All right then, let's get going. Get dressed quickly and we'll hit the road." Emily let out a squeal of pure delight and rushed off to change out of her pajamas, her bare feet pattering against the hardwood floors. Robert chuckled, his heart swelling with love as he watched her scamper away. These father-daughter outings were far too rare these days, but he always strived to make them memorable. As a retired Army major who had served multiple grueling tours in Afghanistan and Iraq, Robert was no stranger to hardship, loss, and the importance of cherishing every moment with loved ones. He had met his first wife, Jen, before joining the military, falling head over heels for her quick wit and fiery spirit. But though deeply in love, Jen had adamantly refused to have children, fearing they might end up orphaned if the unthinkable happened to Robert overseas. Respecting her wishes, but yearning for fatherhood, Robert eventually parted ways with Jen after retiring from the Army, their paths diverging as they sought different futures. Adrift and searching for new purpose, Robert poured his savings into starting a small farm, hoping to put down roots and build a stable life for the family he dreamed of one day having. That's when Lauren entered his life, a humble, hard-working farmhand, with a heart of gold and a smile that lit up even the gloomiest days. With her chestnut hair, sparkling green eyes, and gentle demeanor, Lauren captured Robert's heart from the very first moment. The two fell deeply in love, their connection unshakable as they worked side by side to make the farm thrive. Just a year after meeting, Robert and Lauren tied the knot in a charming country ceremony, surrounded by sunflowers and the well-wishes of their small farming community. Lauren was a vision in a simple ivory gown, glowing with joy as she pledged her love to Robert under a cloudless blue sky. Life with Lauren was pure bliss. She was an excellent homemaker, filling their cozy farmhouse with the mouth-watering scents of freshly baked bread and simmering stews. Her gentle, feminine presence perfectly balanced Robert's sometimes gruff exterior, softening him in ways he had never expected. But as the months passed, a silent heartache grew between them. Lauren tearfully confided that due to a series of abortions in her reckless youth, she was unable to bear children of her own. The news hit them both hard, their dream of creating a family seemingly shattered. Yet Robert refused to let their hopes be crushed. With tenderness and determination, he suggested they adopt a child in need, to pour all their love into a little one who was just as desperate for a family as they were. Lauren readily agreed, her green eyes shining with grateful tears. Enter Emily, a tiny underweight 5-year-old with huge chocolate eyes, a mop of unruly curls, and a guarded expression that spoke of a short lifetime of neglect. Though her birth certificate claimed she had just turned 5, the signs of prolonged malnutrition had stunted her growth, making her appear closer to a malnourished 2- or 3-year-old. But Robert and Lauren saw past the defensive exterior, recognizing the incredible strength and resilience in the bright little girl. They fell in love with Emily instantly, welcoming her into their hearts and home with open arms and unwavering devotion. For 3 blissful years, the family thrived, the farm's success mirroring the joy that filled their household. Robert doted on his precious daughter, teaching her to ride horses, bake pies, and appreciate the simple wonders of country life. Lauren blossomed as a mother, her nurturing spirit helping Emily grow from a timid, withdrawn child into a vibrant, curious girl who excelled in school and made friends easily. But their perfect world shattered one snowy winter morning when Lauren vanished without a trace on her way to an important supplier's meeting in the city. She had left at dawn, carefully navigating the icy roads in their sturdy pickup truck. Dressed smartly in her best wool suit and winter coat, Lauren had kissed a sleeping Robert goodbye, leaving a thermos of coffee and a note expressing her love on the nightstand. But as the hours passed with no word from Lauren, Robert grew increasingly worried. He called her cell phone repeatedly, each unanswered ring ratcheting up his fear. By late afternoon, he knew something was terribly wrong. With a trembling hand, he dialed the police. The news came like a punch to the gut. Lauren's truck had been found submerged in an icy river just a few miles from the meeting site, the driver's side door wrenched open, and Lauren's purse abandoned on the passenger seat. Search and rescue teams combed the frigid waters and surrounding woods for days, but no trace of Lauren was ever found. Robert was devastated, his world crumbling around him as he struggled to process the incomprehensible loss. Grief and despair threatened to consume him, but he knew he had to stay strong for Emily, who was heartbroken and confused by her beloved mother's disappearance. Compounding Robert's anguish were the cruel rumors that began to circulate in town. Whispers that Lauren had deliberately run off with Tony, Robert's slick, city-bred business manager who had vanished the same day, taking a substantial sum of the farm's money with him. Some even suggested the two had been carrying on a sordid affair and had planned the whole disappearance together. Robert refused to give credence to the vicious gossip, clinging to his faith in Lauren's love and loyalty even as doubts gnawed at him late at night. He threw himself into keeping the farm afloat, working long, punishing hours to ensure Emily would always be provided for. Emily, too, stepped up in the face of tragedy, helping with chores around the house and excelling in her studies, despite the gaping hole in their family. At just 8 years old, she seemed to understand that she and her father needed each other more than ever. Now, 2 years later, as the leaves turned brilliant shades of amber and crimson, Robert was determined to give Emily a day of carefree fun and adventure, a respite from the weight of their shared loss. The picturesque tourist town, nestled in the rolling hills just a few hours' drive from their farm, seemed the perfect destination. With its quaint cobblestone streets, towering stone churches, and a sprawling medieval fortress perched atop a hill, the village promised a day of wonder and discovery. As they drove along winding country roads, Emily sat pensively in the passenger seat, her delicate brow furrowed as she watched the autumn-kissed landscape blur past. Robert reached over to pat her knee, his calloused hand gentle. "You doing okay, sweetie?" Emily nodded, managing a small, brave smile. "Yeah, I miss Mom a lot sometimes, especially on trips like this. She would have loved exploring the old buildings with us." Robert swallowed hard, fighting the ache in his throat. "I know, honey. I miss her too, every single day. But we have to believe she's watching over us, smiling down on days like this. She'd want us to embrace joy again, to keep living." Blinking back tears, Emily reached for her father's hand, her small fingers intertwining with his. As they lapsed into poignant silence, the car crested a hill, the picturesque town coming into view. Suddenly, Emily let out a piercing scream, her whole body jolting forward against the seatbelt. "Mom! Dad, stop the car! It's Mom!" Heart thundering, Robert slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching as he pulled onto the gravel shoulder. His wide eyes frantically scanned the scene before them, trying to spot what had triggered Emily's outburst. There, sitting serenely on a weathered stone bench outside a towering, centuries-old monastery, was an achingly familiar figure. A woman clad in the simple black and white habit of a nun, her chestnut hair peeking out around the crisp edges of her wimple. "Lauren?" Robert choked out, scarcely daring to believe his eyes. With trembling hands, he threw the car into park and stumbled out onto the sun-warmed gravel, his legs threatening to give out beneath him. Emily was already racing toward the nun, her anguished cries of "Mom! Mom!" echoing through the quiet hills. As the woman turned at the sound of their approach, Robert felt the air leave his lungs in a rush. It was Lauren, 5 years older, her face a bit thinner and more careworn, but undeniably the love of his life. The woman he had mourned and longed for, the other half of his soul that had been ripped away. "Robert, Emily?" Lauren breathed, her voice tremulous with shock and disbelief. She rose on shaking legs, one hand pressed to her heart as if to contain its wild beating. "Mommy!" Emily flew into Lauren's arms, nearly knocking her back onto the bench with the force of her embrace. Sobs racked the little girl's body as she clung to her mother, her face buried in the rough fabric of the habit. Lauren held her daughter fiercely, tears coursing down her cheeks as she rained kisses on Emily's hair, her face, her trembling hands. "My baby," she whispered brokenly. "My sweet, brave girl, I'm so sorry. I'm here now." Robert approached more slowly, drinking in the sight of his wife, hardly daring to believe she was real. When he finally reached her, he engulfed both Lauren and Emily in his strong arms, crushing them to his chest, as if he could absorb them into his very being. "Lauren," he rasped, his voice raw with emotion. How is this possible? What happened to you? We thought—" He trailed off, 1,000 questions clogging his throat. Lauren tilted her tear-streaked face up to his, her emerald eyes shimmering with love and regret. With a shaking hand, she cupped Robert's stubbled cheek, her thumb brushing tenderly over his weathered skin. "Oh, my love," she murmured. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to leave you. There's so much to explain." Over the next few hours, ensconced in the cozy, sunlit kitchen of the monastery, Lauren recounted her incredible tale, her hands wrapped tightly around a steaming mug of fragrant tea. The meeting in the city, she revealed, had been a trap, a sinister ruse orchestrated by Tony to get her alone and vulnerable. Consumed by greed and his secret gambling debts, Tony had been systematically embezzling from the farm for months, siphoning off funds into his own pockets. When Lauren had accidentally stumbled upon his deceit, Tony knew he had to silence her. He had forced her truck off the icy bridge at gunpoint, sending them both plunging into the black, bone-chilling river. "I truly thought I was going to die," Lauren recounted, her voice trembling at the harrowing memory. "But somehow, I managed to free myself from the truck and kick my way to the surface. The current was so strong it swept me downstream for miles before I could drag myself to shore." Half frozen, battered, and barely conscious, Lauren had collapsed on the snowy riverbank, certain her life was at an end. That's when Mother Mary, the kind, white-haired nun now bustling about the kitchen, had found her. "She and the sisters saved my life," Lauren said, smiling tremulously at the elderly nun. "They brought me here, tended my injuries, and nursed me back to health. But the trauma, the shock of it all, it left me with no memory of who I was or where I came from. I could only remember my first name." For 5 long years, Lauren had lived within the sheltering walls of the monastery, slowly regaining her physical strength even as her memories remained frustratingly elusive. Fragments would surface in dreams: a cozy farmhouse, the scent of horses and hay, a deep rumbling laugh, and a pair of striking blue eyes filled with love. But the details slipped away like wisps of smoke each time she awoke, leaving her with an aching sense of loss and longing. "The sisters helped me search missing persons reports and police bulletins," Lauren explained, her fingers absently tracing the delicate floral pattern on her mug. "But we never found anything that seemed to match. The news articles about my disappearance all said I had likely drowned, that the river currents were too strong to have survived. There was no indication that you were still searching for me." Robert's heart clenched painfully at the thought of Lauren, scared and alone, scouring reports for some clue to her identity, while he and Emily grappled with their grief just a few hours away. If only he had widened the search. If only he had trusted his gut feeling that Lauren was still alive. Sensing his distress, Lauren reached across the table to take Robert's hand, her fingers interlacing with his like puzzle pieces reunited. "It's not your fault, my love. Please don't blame yourself. You had every reason to believe I was gone." Swallowing hard, Robert brought their joined hands to his lips, pressing a fervent kiss to Lauren's knuckles. "But why didn't you come home once your memories started coming back? We would have moved heaven and earth to get to you." Lauren's eyes filled with fresh tears, her shoulders slumping under the weight of guilt and regret. Bits and pieces came back slowly, like shards of a shattered mirror. I remembered your face, Emily's smile, the love we shared. But every time I thought about leaving the monastery to find you, I would be gripped by these terrible panic attacks, flashbacks to that night on the bridge. The fear was so paralyzing, so all-consuming. I felt like I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. As desperately as I wanted to come home, I was too afraid to take that leap, to face the trauma head-on. She shook her head, her voice dropping to a pained whisper. I was a coward. I let my fear keep me from you, and I'll never forgive myself for that. No, Robert said fiercely, his free hand coming up to cradle Lauren's face. You are the bravest, strongest person I know. What you went through, it's unimaginable. You survived against all odds. You fought your way back to us. That's not cowardice, that's courage. Emily, who had been listening silently with wide, glistening eyes, suddenly clambered out of her chair and into Lauren's lap, wrapping her thin arms tightly around her mother's neck. I'm just so glad you're alive, Mommy. I missed you every second of every day. Please don't leave us again. Lauren held her daughter close, burying her tear-dampened face in Emily's silky hair. Never again, my sweet girl. I promise. Our family will never be torn apart again. The trio sat in the fading afternoon light, clinging to each other as if afraid to let go, their tears mingling as they absorbed the enormity of their reunion. The road ahead would be long and painful, the wounds left by Lauren's absence not easily healed. But for now, they basked in the miracle of being together, their shattered family whole once more. In the weeks and months that followed, the incredible story of the family's reunion made national headlines, capturing the hearts of people across the country. Tony was eventually apprehended trying to flee to Mexico, the stolen money recovered from various offshore accounts. He was sentenced to 35 years in prison for kidnapping, attempted murder, and embezzlement, his days of greed and deceit finally at an end.